What's up, gang? Welcome to a new series that I am informally calling Mitch Talks, because here I am talking to you. All right, so it's a little break from the usual writing format, and I'm hoping I can get the ideas that I'm working on across in a more compelling and maybe even a little faster way. So let's start. Today, I want to talk about how our mind is pretty much a giant trap. This is something that I've been getting wrong my entire life, and pretty much most people observationally are making the same mistake. This learning is too important not to share, and so here I am trying to re-diffuse it in my own words, share it with all of you, and also make sure that I understand it really well by hashing it up as much as I can. So how is the mind a trap? Here's what we normally do. I'm saying we. Here's what I definitely do, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people are doing. I have a thought, right? Or a feeling, like I'm not feeling very happy. Oh, I'm not feeling very happy. Well, why not, right? I'm trying to problem solve it. So how do I solve this problem? Well, I'm not feeling very happy. I need to know why. So, well, I wasn't really happy at my job yesterday, but I like my job. It's a great role. It fits me really well. I like the people I work with, but I don't like my job. So maybe I'm not really happy at work. Maybe I don't want to work. Maybe I need to figure out and take a vacation, or maybe this, maybe that, maybe this coworker is the problem. Maybe the way that we're working is the problem. Maybe it's my CEO and she said this thing that upset me, and maybe it's my partner. Maybe it's all these things that are going wrong, right? And I'm trying to understand what in the outside world is causing my emotion so I can change, fix it, troubleshoot it. Boom, problem solved, done, right? So here's the trap. Thoughts are pretty low bandwidth. Reading, for example, is pretty slow as a process, right? You have to process every word after the other. And so when we say a picture is worth 1,000 words, it really is a very true statement. You can look at a picture and in an instant, you can understand something that would take pages and pages to explain. The image is higher bandwidth. Now, when we deal with thoughts, they're a lot like those words, like the reading. They're analytical, they come in a row. You can understand something very quickly, intuitively, and then when you go to explain it, it takes a very long time, or maybe several books or decades, because, again, analytical information is much, much lower bandwidth. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to solve our emotions, the fear I feel, the anger I feel, the discomfort, whatever internal negative thing I'm feeling, and I'm trying to troubleshoot and think through it. So I am really going in a very ineffective way. I'm trying to cut the grass with a pair of scissors, but it's a really big lawn and I am never going to get there. The grass is always going to outgrow my scissor cutting. Maybe this analogy isn't working perfectly, but bear with me on it. So how do you deal with emotions, right? You let them go. How do you let them go? Everyone says, let go of your feelings. Okay, I'm angry, just let it go. But it came back, I'm thinking about it again. So what's the secret? The first thing to understand is that thoughts come from feelings. At least I'm pretty sure of that. So when you're upset about something, it's going to generate a lot of thoughts. You can think about the emotions as the roots of the tree and the thoughts of the leaves. If you're trying to get rid of the leaves, you can sit there hacking away at them, or you can go straight for the roots of the tree. So let's stop hacking at the leaves and let's look at the roots of the tree. So forget our thoughts. Let's look at the emotions, right? What happens when we look at our emotions? Well, why am I angry? We're looking at the emotion, right? I'm angry because blah, 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 blah. This person did this guy did that. I have an endless number of reasons why. They're all convincing. I'm certain about all of them. Even though some of them can probably be debunked, I'll come up with more. The end result is that it's endless. Now, why is that? Because the second I asked, why am I feeling this way? I'm using my thoughts to solve my emotions. Doesn't work. We're back to cutting that lawn with the scissors. It's slow, it's painful, it's not really effective. We'll be cutting forever. So what do? We feel the emotions. It's crazy, right? So here is the issue. Most people aren't even really sure how to feel the emotions. Most people aren't in touch with all their emotions. I sure as hell aren't. Each week since I've understood this, and it's been about 2 to 3 weeks, I've actually come in touch with new emotions. I'm going to back off of that point for a moment, but we'll come back to it. So, how do we feel our emotions? Let me give you a few examples. Normally, before we can actually feel an emotion, we have a sort of automatic process that kicks in and it band-aids the emotion. It takes us away from it. And in that way, we think we're feeling things. Look, I'm angry, I'm feeling it. But I've just picked up my phone and now I'm doing this thing and I've thought about all the solutions to my anger so I can solve it. And this isn't feeling the anger, this is indulging the anger. There's a huge difference. And this is where we get to a practice of mindfulness. So let's again back out for a second and let's take a look at the nature of feelings, the nature of thoughts, and our other senses. You can see things outside, and sometimes things you see upset you, but just because you see something doesn't mean you believe you are it. You can see something violent, but not be a violent person. You can hear a car coming, but know that you're not a car. And that might sound really silly, but we have these 5 senses, and then we have our internal senses, our thoughts and our emotions. Where this breaks down is that our thoughts are a sense. They're a form of intelligence, and they're processing the world, and they're really useful. We need to be analytical sometimes. We need to be able to think critically sometimes. All of this is really important. But what happens when we believe the thoughts? For example, the other day, I was planning something for a friend, a little surprise. And that friend just didn't really react so well. I mean, they didn't blame me, but they did say that they didn't really enjoy the thing and they were very disappointed because they were looking forward to it. Now, I had a thought. I really hate doing things for this friend, and I felt angry. Am I that thought? Am I a person who doesn't like doing things for friends? No, not really. I don't believe I'm that. I don't believe I'm that thought. I just realized that I thought it. Okay. So I could start thinking, why did I think that? Because this, and that. And again, we're getting down that rabbit hole. Forget it. So instead, what is the feeling? If I avoid going down the analytical rabbit hole of saying, how do I make this not happen again? How do I avoid this feeling? Can I just pull out my phone? And I know that's not an active thought process, but if I do just pull out my phone and avoid thinking about it altogether, or watch TV, or have a drink, or whatever it is, all of these are avoiding the issue. So what I have to do is allow the thought to be just a symptom, a finger pointing at a higher level emotional issue, right? We said emotions are higher bandwidth than thoughts. Or if we didn't say that, that's where I was getting with the analogy of words versus images. Emotions are the images. They carry so much information. They're so tangible. They're so visceral. We feel these things. And when we feel these emotions, we get a really deep and intuitive sense of what's actually happening. We just have to feel them. So, where does this story go? When I had my thought about disliking doing things for this friend, I allowed that thought to pass. And then I kind of searched a little bit for the emotion, and it wasn't far behind. When we allow ourselves, rather than going for a crutch, rather than going to try to solve the problem, rather than picking up the phone and just avoiding it, when we don't do that, and when we keep an open heart, when we literally breathe and be mindful of the areas where tension build up and try to avoid tensing those areas, when we emotionally keep an openness where we don't shut down, where we don't allow the anger to build up a righteous force, where we don't get caught up in that anger and say, yeah, because this friend always is rejecting my efforts and they're so ungrateful and I try so hard and fuck them. And why do I even, if we don't indulge all that, but stay mindful, if just like the thought that we don't identify with, if just like the car driving by on the road that we know we can sense the car, but we're not the car. If I know that I'm not the angry emotion, that's not me. That's a sense I'm having. There's a situation, and the very, very complex, all of the nuance and all of my experience and my past experiences dealing with people and the vulnerabilities I've had and times that I've been rejected and all of these things just come together in this huge bandwidth instance of feeling really upset because this is a situation that isn't desirable. If instead of trying to solve it, I sit there and with my open heart and my mindful, well centered presence as best I can, if I just feel that emotion physically, allow it to pass through me, feel that maybe my eyes almost start to water up because I'm sad, because I tried and put myself out there and it just wasn't good enough. And maybe I'm sad because I wanted to make my friend happy and I didn't. There's 100 other reasons and they don't really matter. What matters is that I feel them. I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel that anger pass through me. I imagine myself as the human torch, just erupting in flames. Ah, man, I am so angry that this didn't go well. And it passes. And the thoughts pass with it. In 20, 30 seconds of feeling it, not judging myself for feeling, not analyzing why I'm feeling it, just being angry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. I don't need to know why I feel that way. In that time, the blockage clears. And the next day, or maybe even a few minutes later, in my case, the next day, I spoke to that friend and I told them honestly, I had this feeling. I'm not blaming you. This was my feeling. You know, I realized that you actually wanted me to do more things for you, and I'm not engaging very much with you as a friend. And I wondered if this was part of the reason. I wondered if, because I feel it's very challenging to do things for you, because I feel that there's no middle ground where it's, hey, you tried, but I didn't love it, but I still appreciate you. It's really 80% failure and 20% I love it, and I never end up in that 20%. Maybe that's why I've started disengaging. So I'm not telling you to change. I'm only telling you, I think this is why that's happening, and I want to work on it because now I've seen what's happening in that process. The emotions have cleared, and I just have a clarity now. The muddy water has settled because I didn't shake it up. I didn't run around in my mind spinning circles trying to troubleshoot my thoughts. It actually just came to me without any effort at all. This is actually the art of minimalism. This is doing nothing and being very effective in solving all of our problems. Let me give you an analogy now. Imagine you're vacuuming your carpet, right? When you vacuum your carpet, you don't care about the dirt that's on it. You care about the clean carpet under the dirt. That's all you're after. When you vacuum, every so often, you'll hear one of those click, 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 or maybe even a little ka-thunk, and you go, man, that was a big one. What was it? You don't care. It didn't break the vacuum. The vacuum's fine. You're not going to go digging through the bag of dirt in order to figure out what that thing was, or else you're going to get the carpet dirty again. It's really counterproductive. When we deal with our emotions, so often we're going to feel things. In the process of starting to actually air out my emotions and of allowing myself to feel my feelings without trying to analyze or troubleshoot them, I've had some huge ones. I've had feelings that I didn't know what they were, and it doesn't matter. And they physically gave me either shivers, I felt them through my whole body, I felt tingling in my fingers. And these are things that have probably been pent up for 20 years, 25 years. Honestly, really big feelings that have probably been even determining points in my life. I'm happy with where I am. I regret nothing. But I don't want these energies inside of me anymore. I don't want them affecting me. So I'm letting them out. When a big one passes through, do I stop to analyze it and say, what was that? Honestly, sometimes I start to do that. And then I have to remember, it doesn't matter. It actually has passed. And the only thing I have to do to not have to deal with that emotion again in a healthy way is don't start opening that vacuum bag and digging through. I don't need to trace back and say, wow, what the fuck was that huge feeling? Let's dig into it. Why did I have it? No, I'd just be reeling it back in after it passed. This is letting go. We let go of our feelings. We feel them. We don't have to troubleshoot them. We don't even have to understand them analytically. Intuitively, soon enough, that understanding will come to us. Here's the message I want to end this video with. When it comes to others, there's this huge stereotype, right? I think it's a stereotype of men, but I definitely know a lot of women that do it as well, which is they say, when you bring a problem to a man, he's always going to want to troubleshoot it and solve it. Hey, I know the answer. This is the answer. You can just solve it. Why are you still talking about it? And the stereotype is that women just want to feel the feeling and have it be heard. It turns out they might be right. And again, I've seen people on both sides of this line behave both ways, so I don't really want to lean on the stereotype, but just to illustrate is when someone comes to you and you give them solutions, they actually often get annoyed. They don't want your solutions. They'll solve it themselves eventually. They actually just want to process and unblock the emotion. They normally want a sounding board. What everyone wants really deeply is to be understood. But we don't understand each other very well because we don't sit and listen. We just try and solve. Trying to analyze and trouble solve and problem shoot is a form of judgment. It's analysis. It's breaking things into little pieces. It's saying how they're going to work in the future. It's projecting forward, predicting, and saying, do this, do that. That's all judgment. The greatest thing we can do for someone is simply listen compassionately, understand them. Not why are you feeling this way? Why is a justification question. Justify this thing. It's happening for a reason. Justify it. Why? Why is it happening? We don't need any of that. We don't need it with other people, and we don't need it with ourselves. We are so generally bad at understanding other people and deeply listening to them. And this is one of the most important things in a relationship, period. Why are we so bad at it? Because we're not good at listening to and understanding ourselves. Yeah, this sounds a lot like mindfulness, a lot like meditation. These are great ways to build that ability, the ability to be able to listen to ourselves, to deeply understand ourselves. And it starts to happen the second we stop trying to judge every thought and feeling we have. The second we stop following all our thoughts and feelings and just hanging on to them and running away with them. When we can sit back and do for ourselves what we need to do for others, when we can be that friend and sounding board and compassionate listener, the impartial, objective observer who says, I notice this thing exists. I notice that thing exists. A sad feeling. Great, it's good to label it. I don't even think we need to label it analytically. So we can say, I feel an intense feeling. It is pressure in my chest. It's pressure in my eyes, and they're starting to feel watery. Okay, I know that is sadness. Maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's a bit of fear. Whatever it is, when we can feel these feelings without judging them and stay objective and just notice them and experience them, we can finally become that good friend that we need, that coach, that sounding board, that presence, that understanding for ourselves. And when we can just be with ourselves without judging, then we'll start to unblock a lot of our emotional layers. Not only will we become incredible at doing this for others and have deeper, awesome relationships, but we will start to work through the layers of the onion that is our psyche. So from my experience, over the past 3 or so weeks, I started with sadness. I had a lot of sadness in me. Why? It honestly doesn't matter. But I had it. And that's fine. And after 3, 4, 5 days of feeling that, I got to a thought that was common enough in my past. And that thought was, man, I have a lot of sadness. Am I depressed? I don't want to be a depressed person. I don't think I should feel all this sadness. Well, great. What does that do? So instead, I reminded myself that this is a process, that I have a lot of feelings inside of me. A lot of them are built up over decades, and they'll come out. And soon, when they all come out, it'll be happiness, it'll be energy, it'll be abundance. It won't be fear and sadness and anger and frustration. It'll just be more of the good stuff, the positivity where I want to be and still do already spend a decent amount of my time. How do I spend more of my time? In the happiness, in the awesome feeling, in the unblocked, in the not just needing to hit the couch and watch TV at the end of the day because I'm so drained from, being afraid and scared and all these things. It becomes a pretty simple process. First, I allow all my sadness to come out. It came out on its own. I used my mind a bit to prod around. There are events in my past that are easy enough to see that they probably made me sad. And so the mind is good for that. I use it to poke around, to try and, if you imagine taking a carpet that's a little bit dusty and flapping it out on the balcony, I poke around with my mind at memories. And as I do that, feelings often come out. And as those feelings come out, I try to stay present and mindful and allow them to be experienced without wondering too much about them, without needing to analyze them. And sure enough, they go. From that sadness, I've gone through a few layers. I got from sadness to anxiety. I got from anxiety to fear. This past week, I became aware of how many things I was really afraid of. Some of them big, some of them small. One of them was recording this video. What if I didn't have enough to say? Is something that was in my mind. Not an issue, it turns out. Wasn't likely to be an issue if you know me at all. But I was a little afraid. And that fear would make me pick up my phone, procrastinate, go watch TV, all these other things. It was just enough to take me from my idea to go downstairs into the office and film this video to, let's just go off to the side here a little bit. And maybe I'll just pick up my phone and that's very exciting. And then I could waste a half an hour on there. Well, what happens when I don't pick up my phone? Here is the really big trick. All of these things that we do as crutches, whether it's being on our phone, whether it's drinking, maybe just having a beer at the end of the day, for me, even coffee during my day, when I feel a little bit afraid and I start procrastinating because I'm overwhelmed, if I drink a bit of coffee, I just push through all of it. The second I feel like picking up my phone is a procrastination, but I don't. What happens? If I just sit there and I resist the temptation and I don't go along with it, then after that comes the feeling. I had a crazy experience about a week and a half ago where instead of picking up my phone, feeling a little more mindful than usual, I realized I was doing this as a procrastination and didn't need to. What happened? All of a sudden, I felt this enormous wave of anxiety, like huge. If you'll excuse the crude analogy, it's like when you sit down to go to the bathroom and you're surprised that you actually had a lot to deposit. I put that as delicately as I could, so bear with me. And maybe it takes like 5-10 minutes and there's not much pause. I painted enough of a picture for you. But this is the emotional equivalent. I could almost imagine from my chest, from the area where my heart is, this giant wave of anxiety of all the things that, all the pressures in my life, having to be a good husband, starting a new company, having recently been laid off, being a mentor in the second brain group, and many other things. I caught images of what it was related to, but wow, it was a minute, 2 minutes of solid wave after wave of anxiety. And now it's out. But otherwise, it would have been inside of me, driving me to less mindfulness, driving me to distraction, driving me to always look for ways to not be present and taking my energy away, making me snappier and less patient with everyone around me, because it would be repressed negative energy that I'm holding in that's preventing me from opening my heart. I want to wrap up this video by reminding you guys the formula, as far as I found it so far, is resist the temptation. We need to become mindful enough to notice the things we are doing that are essentially symptomatic of some negative feeling. So again, coffee is probably a huge one. Anything that registers as an addiction, right? Like whether it's overeating, whether it's over phone use, whether it is there's so many examples, whether it's playing video games, whether it's just constantly going on Twitter to avoid work, like everything that is essentially an unhealthy activity. Not that the activity itself is bad, but that we overdo it. These are the urges that are causing us to hide from a bigger emotion that realistically we're not even feeling because we're using the, oh, I'm going to go on Twitter as a cover. But what's under that? I'm procrastinating because I'm afraid. I'm going to connect with people because I'm lonely. Whatever these feelings are, we're going to start to feel them very quickly if we resist the temptation. Probably got to notice the temptation first. So through meditation, that's helped me. I'm not going to instruct you guys on mindful practice right now, but however you come to it, you need to build your mindfulness to a point where you notice that activity coming on, where you don't just do it and realize that like an hour later or half an hour later, oh crap, I've been on my phone. I don't remember picking it up. At the moment where you're about to do that thing, about to pull the phone out of the pocket, catch yourself. Don't. Allow a moment. Breathe. And open your heart and see what passes through. And after you've done that a few times, for a few weeks, honestly, maybe a few years, I'm not sure, it's going to start to get better. For me, it's a couple of weeks, and I'm going to say I have a decent amount of baggage, a good enough amount. I've no doubt you do as well. It's probably a reason you're watching this video. So I'm going to go over this again because it's so important. Notice the temptation to do the activity that's covering the emotion. Overeating, pulling out your phone, grabbing a coffee, and coffee's fine. I'm just saying, notice how you're using it, right? 2, stop, take a breath. 3, allow the feeling without judging, without analyzing, to pass through you. Open your heart and feel what you're actually feeling. And as you do this, you'll start to gain access to more and more emotions. I'm going to credit Daniel Vinci from the Second Brain community who gave me that exact phrasing of starting to access your emotions. So for me, I gained access to sadness, really understanding that that's what I was feeling. I'm not a sad person, but I had a lot of sad feelings. There's a difference. I didn't used to understand that difference, and not understanding that difference prevented me from moving forward. I would freak out that I'm a sad person, and some part of me would shut it down and look for distraction elsewhere. So, first sadness, then it was anxiety, then it was fear. I'm willing to bet the next one is pain, because once you get to fear, I think you're pretty close to pain. And what is pain? It's things that happened in our past. I was rejected in the past by whoever person, and that stuck with me. It left an impression, and I don't want that to happen again. I had this bad experience at work, so I don't want to open myself up and let that kind of thing happen again. So much of our life can even be dictated by the damage that's been done to us. I know a person who's very lonely, but she was cheated on, and she swore that she would never, that was it for men. She was old enough, she had kids, that was it for men for her for the rest of her life. That's a lot of pain and loneliness just to avoid dealing with the initial pain of having been cheated on and left and betrayed. So often we avoid dealing with the actual issue, and it multiplies out into something that drives and controls our life. This is, coming back to the essence of minimalism, the secret to doing less, to genuinely doing less, is to realize that all we need is to be okay with things, and that everything we need to control in the world around us is actually something that we're not okay with inside. And if we become okay with it inside, we don't have to do anything in the outside world. And that's how we become less busy. That's how we have less things to do. That's how we learn to be present and enjoy life and love the people around us and connect. Because we're not busy thinking about what needs to be fixed and all the projects that we can launch to change the world and make our internal feeling better. We're just there. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope this is helpful. Leave your comments. Where are you in your emotional journey? What emotions have you gained access to recently? Or are you still at the point where you don't have access to most of them? Are you still rationalizing everything, saying, I can see myself saying, you need to work out, but I don't do it because I don't like to work out. And that's it. I'm a person who doesn't like to work out. Are you still at that point? Or are you starting to realize that underneath everything, your emotions are driving all of your decisions?